And hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Endurance Unleashed Playbook Live. We are doing episode number 4. Tonight, we are going to be talking about motivation versus consistency. So, if you're joining us tonight, if you don't know how this works, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking a little bit about the news that's going on both in health and also endurance sports, since that's what we do here at Endurance Unleashed. Additionally, we are going to be going over a little bit of a specific topic for the night, and on top of that, we are going to go through and talk and answer some questions that you have while you're joining on the live. So if you have any questions with motivation or consistency for tonight with either health or wellness goals, or if you have issues that you want to talk about in general related to your health, whether that's pain related, knee pain, back pain, hip pain, whatever it is, feel free to leave that down in the comments. I'd love to answer that. We are here live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok down here, so please feel free to drop down any questions that you may have. For those of you who don't know me that are chiming in for the first time, my name is Dr. Rob Berghorn. I am a physical therapist, endurance athlete specialist, and also help active adults stay healthy and fresh as they continue to age as they go through life. So tonight we're going to get started with everything. So what we're going to be talking about initially is some of the stuff that we've been going on in our local community. So for me, I did recently wrap up a low back pain workshop for my community, and it was great. We had a good number of questions. We had a good number of people that were interested in the content, and they were able to gain a lot of information, learning all about their back pain and how to fix it. And if they don't live locally to me, figure out who to talk to and who's the right person for them so that they are able to get the best care for them. We did have a good number of people sign on with me after that. So if you are interested in what we do, we still have a couple of discovery visits left. What a discovery visit is for us is there is a 30-minute session. You come in, you talk with me. We figure out the nitty-gritty of what's going on with your low back, your hip, whatever is ailing you, and we figure out what is the best solutions for you, the next best steps, and then get you on to a plan that will best help you get out of pain and also get back to normal function. So if that's something that you're dealing with, something that you're interested, especially if you're local to the Raleigh area in North Carolina, please feel free to comment down below about your interest, and I'd be happy to get you all set up. Thank you for everybody that is joining on with us tonight. This is going to be something that we are doing every week. So if you do have any questions, any comments, please feel free to leave them down below. I'd be more than happy to answer any of those questions for you, especially if it's related to any pain that you're experiencing physically. And also help you out with finding the right practitioners that may be helping you in your area. So please feel free to leave those comments down below in either TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and I'd be happy to answer those live as we go through things. A couple other things that we had going on. I did recently attend a new running group, and that was great. It was at the Fortnight Brewery Company over in Cary, North Carolina. It was a great group of people. We had about 50 or 60 people. I was able to go for about a 3-mile run with them, and it was a little bit faster than I expected, but at the same time, I had a good time. I had some beer after with them, met some new people, and had and hope to do that sometime soon. As far as so if you're in the Raleigh or the Cary area of North Carolina, please feel free to join with Susan Hoyser, who is the manager of the Fortnight Brewery Running Club, and definitely check out either the running club or the brewery, because the brewery did have a great porter beer that I did enjoy that night. So please feel free to join into that. Also this weekend, if you're local again to the Raleigh area, the Triangle area, or in the area of Holly Springs, North Carolina, and are able to come and attend a workshop led by me, or even an injury screen led by me over at Orange Theory Fitness in Holly Springs, I'd be happy to take a look at you, figure out what's going on, and also at 6:30, I'm pretty sure this Friday, we're going to also be doing a workshop that is built all about doing your first dry triathlon. And if those of you out there don't know what a dry triathlon is you, instead of swimming, you'll do a row for a good number of distance. You will then ride a spin bike, and then from there you will go on to a treadmill, and you will run out the rest of the triathlon in that sense. So if you are interested, you're in the Holly Springs or Raleigh, North Carolina area and want to pop into Orange Theory Fitness and check us out. Please feel free to come in anywhere between 5 and 7:30, and we'll be happy to set you up and get you ready to go. So next thing we're going to cover is some things that we have coming up. For those of you, again, who are still in the Cary area, they do have a Fortnite Brewing fun run this weekend, which is a 5K, I believe. It starts at 11 a.m. this Saturday, so please feel free. And if you're interested in working with us either as a business and in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and would like to have us do a workshop, have us doing an injury screen in the area, or feel like we can support your community, please feel free to reach out to us at info@endurance-unleashed.com, and we'd be happy to get you all set up with a schedule and also a topic so that we can best support you, your community, and your business. So what we're going to be talking about now, we're going to go into a little bit of the news and what's happening this past week in the endurance sports world, and also what's going on in the health sector. So this past Monday, we did have the Boston Marathon. I will be honest, it wasn't the most exciting compared to some of the others that I've watched in the past. The men kind of did stay a little bit grouped up as they normally would. Women kind of separated and branched out and led ahead sooner than expected. But as far as results go, wheelchair results were not any surprising. Marcel Hoog did very well, as he always does. And, we did have great runners in the regular divisions as well, with the winners being John Career and Sharon Lucchetti, beating out favorite Helen O'Beary by about 20 seconds. So congrats to all the winners of the Boston Marathon. You guys put off a great performance as always, and we are able to see your greatness as we go through watching that. As far as what we have coming up the rest of this week go, and also to round out the major world endurance sports for the rest of the month, we do have London Marathon coming up this weekend. So we do have some good favorites in here. We have Eliud Kipchoge, the world champion, the world record holder for the marathon, or used to be world record holder marathon before we had that broken a year or so ago. So hopefully he's going to be able to do some kind of magic this year. He is a 2-time Olympic champion, 4-time London Marathon winner. So hopefully he's able to pull it out again this year to hopefully win. But Jacob Kiplimo, he is the world record holder for the half marathon, and this is his first marathon, or at least world-class marathon that he's trying to win. So if he's going to do this, he could upset Eliud Kipchoge and make the podium in this way. So definitely keep an eye on that. Make sure that you keep your eyes, if you're able to watch the London Marathon and be able to catch all the action with that. Additionally, we do have Jacob Kiplimo. Like I said, he's from Uganda, a very good runner based off of his half marathon record speed. And we have, basically from the women, we have Sifan Hassan. She holds the women marathon record and the Olympic champion of this past Olympics from the Netherlands. We have Tigist Assefa as well, one of the fastest women in the world from Ethiopia. So keep your eyes peeled for what's going to be happening in the London Marathon coming up this weekend. So please feel free to check that out if you're interested. And if you are in London and you're in the area and want to check out the London Marathon, I would go through just to even see for the blip of a second that you're going to see these runners run by. If you have the opportunity, you will not regret it. So again, as we move into our next section, we're going to be talking tonight about consistency, beating motivation, and why it's important to always stay consistent over being motivated or looking for motivation when trying to accomplish anything, whether that's in life, in sport, at work, whatever it is. We're going to be talking about tonight. But before we get into that, what I want to make sure is that if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, both on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you are on any of those platforms, please feel free to leave those down for us so that we can help you get all set up and ready for whatever you want to accomplish. So let's get into it. So for those out there, I want you to raise your hand if you ever felt super motivated to work out one day and then totally not ready to work out the next day. So, even someone like myself who is a endurance athlete for over 20 years, I do find days where I don't feel motivated. I find days that I also can't be consistent. So I definitely feel both sides of it. You know, life gets in the way sometimes. We also have issues with trying to have the energy to do something, or we also have the issue with the drive to do something and keep doing it every day. But as long as you do a little bit of something rather than nothing, it's always going to be helpful for you. Motivation is going to be powerful, but it can be very unpredictable, as you would expect. Motivation is something that is going to be very fleeting for you. But meanwhile, consistency, there is always real results live. By doing something rather than nothing every day, you have the opportunity to keep that habit going, keep your ability to focus on what that goal is, get one step closer, instead of having that feeling of not doing something that you wanted to do, not something you wanted to stay consistent with. So like going to the gym, going out for runs more often, hanging out with friends at the gym by doing some weightlifting, doing some crossfitting, training for a high rocks race, whatever it is. By staying consistent and doing something, you're more likely to be happier at the end of the day. You're going to have more dopamine, more serotonin, and oxytocin as well, released into your body. You're going to feel better about yourself rather than if you just focused on what you had for motivation, and you're going to lose that good feeling by staying home and then regretting it later. Based off of what we were just talking about, motivation is just a feeling. It comes and goes. Some days you're going to feel like you're crushing your workout. Other days you'd rather be eating cereal in bed. So if we have those days, it's okay to have those days. It's not something you should beat yourself up about or something that you should get frustrated over if you don't feel motivated for a day. But if you know that you want to be more consistent with your running, you want to be more consistent with your swimming, just getting to the pool and doing something, going to the lake or to the ocean, whatever you're doing for your swimming, as long as you're getting in the water, making an effort to actually get there, doing something by the beach, that may help you a little bit, but not necessarily feel as good as if you tried to actually get into the water. So trying to do something that is relatable to that is going to be much more helpful than saying, I'm just going to go and have cereal in bed instead. And if you only train when you feel motivated, you're lucky if you're only going to train about a couple of times a week because of that factor. You know, we're only going to see results when we are very consistent with our work rather than when we're just motivated. I know I mentioned last week that there was a study that recently came out that was done over in Finland, and they basically had the fact of they had their athletes go through 10 weeks of strength training. They took 10 weeks off, and they did 10 more weeks of strength training after that, and then they analyzed what happened to their muscle proteins at each section of the performance cycle. And basically what they found is that some proteins, while people were resting, maintained the same levels based off of normal and dietary and activity levels that were maintained during that period of time. And then also as they returned to activity, that there was a return to the same level of proteins pretty quickly, which shows not only that we have muscle memory, but by being consistent, we're able to maintain our ability to perform and function, even if we may not be motivated at some points. So it's okay if we miss a day or two every now and then, but if we notice that we're not staying consistent enough, we're going to still suffer with our training and our performance, because obviously we do need to take both physical and mental breaks from our training. So talking about consistency, if we are consistent, if we are focusing on being very regular with our training, with our actions, with our activities during the day, whether that's something new we're trying to improve on our health, trying to get rid of a thing in our food or a diet that we're trying to avoid, like sugar or alcohol, trying to stay consistent by reducing that amount rather than focusing on cutting it out completely when we're motivated to cut it out completely. Obviously, that's going to be better than if we just kind of say like, oh, I'm just going to binge for today instead. So definitely focusing on creating momentum, a habit, and an identity around yourself, making whatever you're trying to change or whatever you're trying to do more of an important thing that you identify with yourself, so that you have an ability to focus on that goal and achieve that goal a lot easier than if you just focus on it when you're motivated and it's not part of you and you don't have a strong enough why. So if you think of it like an interest in a bank account, small deposits in your consistency to do something every day will make it become a massive change over time. You notice that one workout isn't going to make much of a difference, but if you do work out consistently 3-5 times a week over a month, over 3 months, even if it's small things here and there on some days, but you crush it at least a couple times a week, then you notice that there's a much bigger difference than if you just do things when you're motivated. You know, consistency will help you create better form. It'll make you have fewer injuries. It'll help you have more gains. It'll have you having less soreness after you do any kind of workouts or any kind of strength training sessions or any kind of endurance workouts that you kind of do. And you don't get strong by doing it hard once. It's always when you do it consistently, always when you're trying to work things gradually over time. And the same thing goes, like if we're specifically talking about endurance sports and endurance athletics, VO2 max, like improving your aerobic endurance, it takes a long time. It definitely takes dedication, especially when we're trying to get faster, especially trying to improve our economy, our ability to sense our running form and change that up depending on what's going on, especially if we're trying to eliminate something that may be slowing us down. Staying consistent with it helps retrain our body appropriately. It helps create new signals. It helps create new blood vessels in our brains, in our muscles. It also helps with maintaining and teaching our nervous system how to move better rather than focusing on just doing it every now and then. The more frequently we're able to do it, the better off. Just like with Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, he shot 1,000 shots every day. He did that not because he wanted to, but because it made him the greatest. Everybody loves Kobe. Everybody loved what kind of an athlete he was, the ethic that he had, the quotes that he did, the companies that he worked with. But when it came down to it, it's because he did thousands of shots every day, every week, every month that made him the greatest person that he is as an athlete in basketball. And if we're going to relate it to basketball too, back in his UNC days, Michael Jordan was not great. I've heard from people in the sports world. I've also heard directly from people who used to practice with him now that I moved down here to North Carolina. So he was terrible as an athlete. He was terrible as a teammate. But over time, he practiced every day. He stayed consistent, and he became, again, one of the greatest of all times. It all happens by doing it every single day, doing something that is going to get you closer to your goals rather than focusing on when you're motivated to do something. So your body's going to adapt best to that frequency and the repetition, not just the random bursts of motivation. You know, the most successful athletes, like we just mentioned, they are the ones who follow the plan. You can deviate from the plan. The plan doesn't have to be followed to the T, but as long as you're getting the main structure, the main outlook on it, and you're achieving and getting close to the goals, we can always modify the plan as we go forward. So obviously, a couple of tips that you can do is either instead of skipping sessions, we're shortening up sessions. If we are not feeling like we want to do a specific exercise in the gym, we can always change the exercise, create something new. If we're trying to work a specific muscle group, we can always change that exercise. We can change up how we do it. Instead of using dumbbells, we can use cable columns. If we're someone who likes to use the cable columns and we use dumbbells frequently, we can use stuff with the barbell. You can get very specific and very different. If you're someone who does like to do weights a lot, trying a little bit of calisthenic workout can help change up things, still work the same muscle groups and keep things fresh, keep things interesting, instead of making it more about like how motivated you are to do that same routine for the second week or third week in your cycle. So trying to focus and change up small things in your program may help you not only stay consistent, but also motivated. So whether that's, like I said, changing up how long the session is, how often you're doing the session, if you're breaking up the session throughout the day because you don't necessarily have time to do it all at one spot, and also changing up how you're doing your exercises, how you're doing, and what equipment that you're using, just to make it fresh, make it interesting, and keep yourself going. So obviously you want to set a routine, you want to write it down, you want to share it with friends, with family, just so that they know and can keep you accountable to what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. You want to track the wins that are going on, write that down, whether that's in a notebook, a diary, a clipboard, posting it on social media, whether that's a video, a picture. a story, whatever it is. Doing stuff like that not only helps you stay motivated in that sense, but also helps you stay consistent, obviously, because you want to keep doing that things. You want to keep feeling good by sharing those fun things with not only yourself, with your family, your friends, and also sharing it with the larger community that follow you on social media. So basically, what you want to be able to do in order to make it consistency easier, if you're someone who likes to go running, laying out your clothes the night before you go running, making sure that you're setting up your pre-workout meals, or setting up or going with a training group, or running with a buddy, or going to the gym with a buddy. Doing that kind of stuff will definitely help. Obviously, you want somebody who's reliable and just wants to be held accountable like you. So making sure that you have someone to help you out, or making it almost impossible to ignore the fact that you're trying to go run more, lift weights more, or trying to improve your health, making it almost impossible for you to ignore it. Please feel free to try those out, because those are what's going to help you the most. To close this part out, I want to say that motivation is going to get you started, but consistency is what's going to keep you going. And you don't need to feel hyped all the time. Nobody can do that. Social media may lie to you and think that that's how things go, but it's not the case. So don't feel down about yourself if you don't feel motivated to go to the gym or try to improve your health for the day. It is something that takes a lot of work. It is something that takes consistency, and that's why we're talking about it tonight. But if you try to do something rather than nothing, it's what's going to help get you towards your goals. So pick one thing this week. If you're trying to do something, pick one thing this week and commit to it. Do it and commit to doing it every day, no matter what. So whether that's decreasing the amount of sugar you're taking, decreasing the number of coffees that you're drinking, decreasing the number of coffees that you're buying rather than making it at home, decreasing the amount of sugar, if I didn't say that already, decreasing the amount of salt that you're taking, going to the gym one more time a week, going to walk outside for a couple of minutes each day. Just pick one thing that you want to do and to help improve your life, and figure out what that is, and try to do it every day for a week, and then do it for another week, and then do it for another week, and keep doing it and build upon it, so that you can not only feel better about yourself, but looking back on it months, years later, you're able to say that you accomplished something great that you never thought that you potentially could do. So that's it for tonight on our main topic. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be talking about some of the questions that we've got from the community. We put out a questionnaire before each live. I put it out a little bit late this week, I will admit that. But if you do have any questions, you're live on here with me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Please feel free to leave those down below in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions, whether that's related to motivation, consistency, like we're talking about tonight, or if it's related to any kind of pain you're dealing with, whether that's foot pain, knee pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, whatever it is, feel free to leave that down in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer that for you and figure out a solution for you live here on air. Otherwise, we're going to be getting to our questions that we have from people tonight that we got from our community. So our first question comes from Sarah, and she said, I have been trying to stay consistent with my training, so very, very on brand for tonight. I don't have issues with going out and running, but I do struggle with my strength training. What gives? So that's very common. You know, it is common, especially with endurance athletes. They don't love doing strength training. They love going out. They love running with their friends. They love being in nature. They love trying to improve their personal best, obviously. And it's very similar with strength training. You just have to like what you're doing. And for some runners, it's just not the case. As far as strength training, it is very important. I've harped upon it a lot in my content, whether that's in our regular social media posts, even in the lives that we've done for the past 4 weeks. This is something I'm trying to get more consistent with and stay on top of. So this tonight's message also goes great with what I'm trying to do with this live, and also the podcast we're creating from this. So for Sarah and her answer, what gives in the sense that, you know, trying to struggle with the strength training is, you know, obviously you don't love it as much, and that's okay. Obviously you have to think about why you're doing it, and I think that may be part of the problem. and the why we do strength training, because it is being more pressed as far as the endurance athlete world, as far as the ability for you to improve your performance. It's also going to help you prevent injury. So if you want to stay running for longer periods of time throughout your life, if you want to avoid injury and time on the sidelines and not hanging out with your friends, if you want to stand up on more podiums and races, if you want to focus on increasing your distances, so if you want to go from marathon training to ultra marathon training, if you want to go from doing high rocks work or go into the high rocks world, you're going to need to be doing strength training to prevent all that or to get to those goals. So I think it's going to matter, Sarah, for more about your why and what you're doing in your regular daily training. Obviously, if it's a time commitment issue, then that is something that we have to figure out with your plan, and you can definitely talk to me about that. But as far as your training overall, I think that maybe the motivation is trying to figure out. The motivation also that's going to help you stay consistent is understanding the why of why you're doing strength training and figuring out that strength training is vital for me to do running, so I have to do that consistently in order to prevent pain, in order to prevent injury, and also to help my performance to improve. So definitely focus on that. Focus on your why for right now, of why you're doing it, so you can stay consistent. And just like I was saying before, like if you are having trouble with consistency with strength training, you don't necessarily have to focus a dedicated entire time to strength training. If you're in the park and you're walking and you see a bench, you can do a split squat. If you are walking along the same thing in the same park and you want to do a couple squats, you can do there. You don't have to dedicate a specific amount of time. You can do a couple exercises periodically throughout your day, when you're on breaks for work, when you're in between doing different tasks, exercise here and exercise there. As long as you're doing something to stay consistent with it day in and day out, I'm here for it. So definitely, if motivation is a factor in the sense of or the consistency issue is the factor of you don't love it and you don't understand your why, focus on your why. But if you're struggling with the fact of finding time throughout the day, throughout the training week to do it, just break it up throughout the day. Do something rather than nothing. All right, so that's good. If anybody, again, has any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. Please feel free to ask anything about running, endurance sports, triathlon, back pain, knee pain, hip pain, ankle pain, whatever pain you have. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I can't answer your questions live. Be happy to help you with anything that you do have going on. But we're going to get on to our next question for now. So this comes from Leanna, and she said, I have been struggling with my biking. I have just started training for triathlons, and I find that I get very out of breath and I feel woozy, especially after going over hills. What can I do? So I do understand that. I do know where you're coming from, Leanna. I'm sorry you're going through this. And I do know a little bit about your backstory just because you are seeing me for your therapy right now. And I'm going to assume you're giving this to me, but only because it's for everybody else that's listening. So basically that answer happens to go with what your kind of fitness is right now. Obviously, I know right now you are working with a triathlon team, a brand new triathlon team to you. You may not be at their level right now, and I know you're not, cardiovascular-wise, muscular-wise. So you're just not there yet, and you may be overworking your body to the point where you're either getting out of breath, you're bonking, if you want to put it that way, in the triathlon sense of terms. You are not either hydrated enough, potentially, you're not getting enough carbs prior to your riding your bike, so you don't have enough fuel in your body. That could be happening as well, especially if you're feeling woozy, dizzy, like your blood glucose is low. So that could be happening as well. If it's related more towards just being out of breath, like we were talking about before, it could be your cardiovascular system. So if you're outstripping that by working too hard for a too long period of time, you're going to stress your heart out a little bit too much. You may not be efficiently producing oxygen around your blood by your heart pumping efficiently enough, by pumping too fast, rather than getting the blood around efficiently and getting oxygen exchanged through your lungs. If you're not doing that, especially if you're someone who suffers with asthma, that could definitely be a case as well. So my recommendation would be, in this case, if we're strictly talking about the cardiovascular sense, to slow down. Keep track of your heart rate if you can while you're doing it. If you're wearing a heart rate monitor attached to your training watch, that'll definitely help you. It will tell you your heart rate zone. Obviously, if you want to do more of an endurance ride, you're focusing on just feeling out the ride and just working on just how long you can ride without really worrying about how quickly your heart's beating, or trying to work on your VO2 max, your speed, your overall high level performance. Then what we need to focus on is your how you feel. So like if we're not paying attention to the heart rate, it's conversation. So if you're riding your bike and you feel like you're able to ride and still hold the conversation with somebody, you're probably at the appropriate level for you to be able to continue riding for as long as you want. Then we just be stressing the muscular system, the muscles will fatigue, and then we won't necessarily have that woozy, out of breath feeling. If you want to have bursts of that feeling, or if you're trying to work on improving your speed, your overall performance, your anaerobic performance, so your ability for your body to produce energy without the presence of oxygen, basically like you're sprinting for shorter periods of time and you want to improve your overall absolute performance, then working into having bursts of conversation or not being able to converse at all but still having control of each breath is where I would lead you to next. But if you're starting to lose control of your breath, you're starting to notice that your heart is thumping in your ears, and you're not really paying attention to what's going on your fitness watch, that could be something you could pay attention to as well, instead of focusing on the heart. Because generally the heart rate zones for people who are not very experienced in the triathlon world, or even like cycling world or running world, you can struggle with trying to keep track of, like, my heart rate should be this, my heart rate should be that, but I still feel like that. There's a lot of things that go into it. So just focus on how you feel, how much you're able to breathe in and out, how much conversation you're able to have with people, and focusing on the intention of that ride, that run, whatever you're doing. So as long as you're having that conversational pace, that is going to be more of that easier endurance kind of side of things. If we're starting to have bursts of conversation, we're leaning more towards the anaerobic side. We're starting to lean more towards the performance side of things, improving your performance. But obviously, if we're flatlining, that's the wooziness, the out of breath, the nausea, the vomiting, the cramping. That's when we're pushing our heart and our body too far for what it can tolerate activity-wise right now. And right now, you either may need to, for whatever group you're riding with, to either slow down or to understand that you may need to take your time a little bit when you're going, especially uphill. Like you said, that's where you're having the most issue with. To take your time, catch up to people afterwards, and so that you don't feel woozy, you don't have any cardiac issues going forward, and also so that you don't have any issues of passing out or cramping. So I hope that helps you answer that one. So next question I have, it comes from Penny, and she says that I find that I'm getting older and I'm having a harder time keeping up with my cycling group. I have had a number of issues over the years, but those are mostly resolved. What is going on? So Penny, that's a very good question, and I do know who you are. So I do know a little bit about your age, your backstory, and whatnot. So I know you've had a number of injuries in the past too. I know some of them are not fully resolved, as you said in the question. But if we're just going to focus on the older factor, that does come into a big play, especially as we do get older. We need to be more efficient, and we also need to have better efficient systems, both cardiovascular wise and muscular system wise, in order to keep up with the youngins, if we want to put it that way. I know for a fact as well that you're the peri and around menopausal age, and you're also female, and you also recently told me that you had a change in your diet, moving more towards the pescatarian route. You still have dairy, but you're more towards the pescatarian route. You've cut out chicken, like meats in general. So you've had that in the last year and a half, and that's when you also started noticing that you had a decline in your performance. So what I would say answer-wise is, obviously, if you haven't gotten checked yet, check your hormone levels, making sure that your estrogen and also your testosterone hasn't dropped too significantly or is too significantly out of sync, to make sure that we're kind of even keel, or we have as much ability to produce enough hormones to maintain muscle mass, because that would be the factor. Not only that would be causing some of the issues that you've been dealing with your knees, your hips, your ankle. I know since you had that old fracture, that would happen with that. So we want to focus on maintaining muscle mass. So sometimes if we don't have enough hormone producing, we're not able to maintain muscle mass, and therefore we can deal with some struggle with performance. Similar kind of thing if we're not consuming enough proteins, if we're not consuming enough in general, because we're cutting out some meats, that could lead to inefficiencies in our protein profile in our blood, in our system, in our muscles. So if we're not taking in enough through our plants, through our fish, through our dairy, and through the eggs that you also say that you eat, that could be an issue as well. So if you're not consuming about 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight that you weigh, you may be missing out. You may be, especially if you're riding for long periods of time, if you're someone who's part of a cycling group that rides 40, 50, 60, 70 miles a weekend, and you're also someone who does tens of miles every week as well, or multiple times a week. That could be a factor as well if you're not consuming enough protein to repair and then also maintain the muscle mass that you already have. You're going to have breakdown. You're going to lose muscle faster, especially as we get older, especially because you're a woman, especially because you're a menopausal age. There is a significant drop of muscle mass loss or a significant increase in muscle mass loss as women approach menopause age. So getting into your strength training, making sure that you're consuming enough protein to help and recover, making sure you're sleeping enough, making sure that you are hydrating enough, and also making sure that you are allowing yourself rest days, to making sure that we have the recovery, we're maintaining your muscle mass, and also we're consuming enough, not only protein, but also number of calories in total to replace what we're expending, so our body is basically not eating itself. So I hope that helps, Penny, and we will move on to the next question that we have prepared for tonight. Again, if you guys have any questions, we have 3 more left for tonight that are from our community already. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them for you live on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. So please feel free to leave them down below, whether that's related to endurance sports, whether that's related to back pain, knee pain, hip pain, whatever it is pain-wise that a physical therapist like myself can help you out with. I'd be more than happy to help you and answer any of those questions that you have. But the next question we have for tonight is from Tom, and he says, my Achilles has been bugging me when I run. I had a recent change in my shoes. I am not sure if that is the cause, but I have not really changed anything else. What should I do? And Tom, that is very good detective work that you started with initially, and I do appreciate that going through that with you a little bit more in depth if you're interested. But a couple of things that I look at whenever I'm talking with somebody that's dealing with an injury, some pain that popped up after either changing equipment, changing their running plan, is taking a look at all of the things. So have we changed up our training plan? Have we changed up our diet? Have we changed up our equipment that we're using? Have we had more stress in our life? Have we had an emotional experience that's affecting us significantly right now? Are we having a significant change in an amount of activity that we're doing outside of our training, whether that's good by doing more activity or less activity, because that all factors in. So Tom, I know for you, we talked about, or you're saying that your shoes are the only thing that you changed, but I'm just going to say for everybody else that's listening, just so that they can keep in mind as well, if you are someone who is changing up their training, whether that's increasing the number of miles that we're running each week, or increasing the amount of hills that we're doing each week, or if we're changing and adding in a speed day rather than keeping it as an easy day, or we're running significantly longer on one day than we are on the rest, or we're cutting out an additional rest day. If we had 2 rest days in our training cycle per week and we cut out one of them and we notice a difference in how we feel, how we perform, those are all things that we need to focus on in order to understand if our training may be part of the issue. We talked about nutrition with Penny in the previous question, so that's another factor. If you're someone who went from eating everything like people would not say normally would, but if we're someone who normally eats everything and doesn't have any restrictions on their diet, and then cuts out meat, whether that's beef, pork, chicken, whatever it is, if you're cutting all of it out and you go strictly vegan or vegetarian, pescatarian, or you have dairy, if you're cutting out something significantly, something has to replace it. Because if you're not replacing and you're just going on about your thing, your day, and just consuming more carbs throughout the day and not getting enough protein, that could be a factor as well as what we talked about with Penny. Similar kind of thing is if we have changes in our equipment, like we're talking about with your shoes. So the way that shoes can factor in, especially with the Achilles, is if we go from a shoe that had a good amount of heel drop to one that doesn't have a lot of heel drop. So if you're someone who's also trying to go from regular running shoes to minimalist running shoes, that could be a factor as well. So for example, like most regular running shoes, like the Brooks Ghosts or the Adrenalines, the Mizuno Wave Riders like I use, the Asics GTS series, the Adidas, I'm blanking on the name, the New Balance 1080s, any of the Nike Flies, those kind of things. If we have those shoes, those generally will have anywhere between 8 millimeters of drop between the heel and the toe. Basically, there's a thicker pad, obviously, in the heel than there is in the toe, so we'll have that heel drop. What that does is it creates a little bit of a hill or an incline in our shoe that takes stress off the Achilles. So if you're someone who changes out your shoes and you drop your shoe height or the heel drop height by going to either a minimalist shoe like an Ultra or a Salomon, or you go towards Hoka's too, which have a little bit of a drop, sometimes that can put more stress on the Achilles, especially if you don't have the appropriate strength in your calf to tolerate that stress, resulting in overuse, resulting in some of the pain you may be dealing with. So if that's the case, if that's how you change your shoes, you whether went to a minimalist shoe, you increase your mileage, you changed up your diet, that kind of thing, or we had a change in the heel drop of the shoe or the cushion of the shoe that could be leading to what's going on with your Achilles. But if you have more questions, Tom, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I will be happy to answer that for you. So next question that we have for tonight, if anybody, again, has any more questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. We're here live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok down below. So please feel free to leave those questions for me about endurance sports, training, competition, shoes, anything you have specifically going on regarding pain, getting stronger, staying healthy, whatever it is, I'm happy to help. I am a doctor of physical therapy. I do live in North Carolina, and I do have my license in New York. So anybody, my friends and family, neighbors over in North Carolina, specifically the Raleigh area, or New York, I'm happy to help either in person or virtually with all your physical therapy related needs and performance and training needs. So the next question is coming from Heather, and she says, I'm dealing with some low back pain that goes down the front of my leg anytime my leg goes straight. Why is this happening? And just so she gave me a little bit of a tidbit, she does have a history of a disc replacement at L5-S1. So to give people who don't understand necessarily what a disc replacement would be, they've come out with, in recent years, I would say it's probably about 3 or 4 years now, a disc replacement is a surgery that they would do instead of a fusion. The good thing about this is at the time when it came out, I'm not sure now, is that if something ever did go wrong with it, they can replace the replacement. That may have changed, and that is maybe possible now, but before, when it initially came out, if something happened with this replacement, they wouldn't be able to fix it. One good thing about this is if something does happen with the replacement, if the replacement does wear out, you can fuse it just like if you would get a spinal fusion. So the difference between getting a disc replacement and a spinal fusion are very specific. So if a disc replacement, basically like if we were replacing a knee joint, hip joint, shoulder joint, we can replace discs. Herniated discs in your back, we can replace those now. Basically, they'll do an incision in your back. Sometimes they'll do it from the front, depending on what and how much is involved. They will do an incision. They will rotor-rooter out the disc. They will rotor-rooter out parts of the bone to make it nice, fresh bone that has a blood supply going to it. They will input that disc replacement into the spine, and then they will make sure that's all nice and slip. They'll allow the bone around it to grow into it. with either hydroxyapatite or some kind of hydroxyapatite style glue to help bond a little bit better as the bone grows in, and then they will close you up, and then you'll recover and heal. Just like your normal disc that you have in your back right now, it'll help you move, glide, just like it normally would, just like you would if you had your shoulder, hip, knee, or whatever replaced. It does help restore normal function. The problem that happens with fusions, and they don't talk to you about this, is that if you ever do have a spinal fusion, you're solidifying a spinal level. And if you're solidifying a spinal level, you can't no longer move at that level. And therefore, because of that, you're going to move increased motion at the levels above and below. So specifically for Heather, she had it at L5S1. So basically, she had her lowest spinal level fused with her pelvis. Some people have this naturally. It is an anatomical variation. But at the same time, for her, she's basically, if you had a fusion at L5S1, you have an increased likelihood to wear out either your SI joint on either side and the back of your pelvis. If you look at the back of your pelvis and you have those little dimples, above and right around there, and also below that is going to be the SI joint. So you can wear out your SI joint a little bit quicker. You can wear out your hip joint a little bit quicker because you're not moving as much there. And also you can wear out your L4, L5 right above that a little bit faster than if you've had the replacement. Not everybody's a candidate for a disc replacement. There are a couple things that go into figuring out if you're a candidate for it, specifically if you have additional comorbidities, especially being under anesthesia for longer periods of time. But that does factor in. But again, like I said, if anything happens with the disc replacement, we wear out the disc replacement over time. We can end up getting a fusion instead. Or if they come out with a replacement for the disc replacement, then that is a factor too. It will just depend at that point in time, your age, your bone density, and also how good that bone stock actually is, and if you have enough of it to replace the replacement. But as far as your answer, Heather, I know we went on a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted everybody else to understand what's going on in the audience. So you said that you're getting pain down the front of your leg anytime your leg goes straight. So I'm going to assume that anytime you're standing upright, anytime you're laying down flat on your back, anytime that you go to put your leg behind you when you're walking, so anytime you're going to push off from the ground, that's all factoring in, and that's all giving you some of that pain shooting down the front of your leg. And I definitely understand how debilitating that could potentially be, because I don't know what your pain level is like. And I can also understand how stressful that can be for you, not knowing why it's happening so frequently, and also frustrating how it can be that you're still not finding a solution despite you going to physical therapy like you've told me in the past, and also why you can't do normal Pilates activities because of this issue. So it could be coming from a number of things. We talked about the back. So you've already had L5S1 replaced. So we don't necessarily have to worry about the fusion or any kind of issues with that. And this would be more of the L3, L4, or L1, L2 area, depending on, it would be anywhere from L1, L2, L2, L3, L3, L4, even a little bit of L4, L5 spinal levels. I think if we're going to say anything, it would be more likely the L3, L4 if it's going to be any nerve root compression to that. So if we're looking at the spine, we may need to look at your activation in your core, the deeper core muscles, your stabilizers of your spine, and make sure that your larger global muscles in your spine, your erector spine, the big beach muscles on either side of your spine, are not working too hard. And the deeper core muscles around our abdomen are working a lot better and they're coordinated appropriately. Some people even at the gym, they may work out very hard, they may lift a lot of weights, but if you don't have the right amount of coordination, you can still have back pain. You may be strong and your beach muscles may be strong, but if you don't have the coordination to activate appropriately on time and also tolerate the stress and the force that you're imparting on your body, those are all factors of why you can still have back pain and still be an athlete and be a successful athlete at the same time. If it's not the spine and it's not the compression of the nerve root in the spine because of either herniated disc, spinal stenosis, or anything like that, it could be related, specifically since it's leg motion generated. It could be tightness in your hip flexors, so it could be your iliopsoas muscle as deep within your pelvis and your abdomen. So your hip flexor, if your hip flexor is tight, it could be from that, but usually it's not always just that. Hip flexors will get tight because of either weakness or core abdominal weakness, and the hip flexor is taking advantage by trying to act in replacement of the abdominals, or if we're dealing with both. So we can have weak abdominals and weak, tight hip flexors, resulting in that pain, and that muscle will compress down on the nerve as it comes out of the spine and runs down towards the front of the thigh on the hip, resulting in some of this pain that we're doing, especially since it's the same action of putting stress on that muscle. So we could be getting stressed and strained through that. Additionally, it could be related to any kind of impingements from some of the muscles or the fascia, which is basically like a covering that goes over all of our tissues, whether it's muscle, ligament, and whatnot. So we could be dealing with that as well. As far as like compression, I definitely have to do more of an exam on you specifically to figure out what that specific cause is. But usually, from my experience, what I've experienced with people in the past, that's usually where it's coming from, by getting increased compression somewhere, and it's multiple factors of where it could be. So don't always look at the x-rays, don't always look at the MRI of the low back. It's not necessarily where that pain is coming from, even if we're dealing with some disc issues. We need to focus on where that disc issue is, where it's pressing on. If it's pressing on anything, we need to play around with motion of your back to see if we isolate the back, and if we isolate the back and we don't necessarily have the pain generated by movement of the back in isolation, then it's most likely not the back. And we also need to play around with your position. So if we have it with sitting versus standing versus with laying down, if we have it in all positions, even when we're laying down, we're going to deal with something less likely of compression nerve. And you did say that you do have pain when you lay flat, anytime your leg is straight. So when you're on your stomach, when you're on your back, when you're standing, when you're sitting, anytime that leg goes straight on you and you deal with pain, it's most likely not related to disc, I'm going to say. So if you're interested, come on into my office. What we do is we offer a discovery visit. Basically, that's a 20 to 30-minute session. You come in with me. It's complimentary. It's free. We sit down, we get to the nitty-gritty, and we figure out what your best solutions are based off of the root cause of your issue, not necessarily focusing on what, we still focus on what you've tried in the past. We focus on what we still need to do in order to fix your issue, and then we develop a plan around that. And if you love that plan, we move forward and we get your pain fixed and get you situated and get you pain-free again. So that's Heather's question. We got one more question left. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We're here live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So please feel free to leave those questions in the comments. I'd be happy to answer anything related to endurance sports, running, cycling, swimming, triathlon, or any kind of pain that you're dealing with, low back pain, hip pain, knee pain, and figure out what we can do for you to give you at least a little bit of help tonight, in order to not only give you some clarity, give you some help, but also give you some level of an idea and understanding. By doing that, we're able to hopefully reduce some of your pain and reduce some of your frustration with that. So last question of tonight. Speed training has always given me hamstring issues. I'm not sure why this happens. It also bothers me when I do a lot of hill work. What should I do to fix it? And this is coming from Amy. So Amy, I'm very glad that you asked this question. Hamstring issues, especially if it's a high hamstring issue, like up towards like where you sit down on, and up into like the bottom of your butt. So if you are dealing with that kind of an issue, I definitely understand that. This comes at a number of different reasons why this could happen. This could be related to where you're generating force from. Like if you're dealing with a muscle compensation kind of issue, if we're dealing with a mechanical issue where our form and our biomechanics are not appropriate, we could be dealing with it this way as well. If we are dealing with training load, so if we're doing too much, too fast, too soon, if we're running for too long period of time and then we're just adding in speed training at the same time, that could be factoring as well. So obviously making sure that we're recovering appropriately, like we talked with Penny's question, or even as we got into Tom's question, we want to make sure that everything's kind of staying consistent as we're trying to add things in. But the speed training effort, if you've always done speed training, but it's always giving you issues, especially as you try to push yourself either faster or do it for longer periods of time, or if we're doing longer, steeper hills, or longer or steeper hills, or we're doing it more frequently, those definitely factor in, and we got to look at what's going on. So obviously, first thing I would look at is your form. Is your running form appropriate? We always want to make sure that we're not overstriding. That is a very big complication that happens with runners. So if you're going to step out for your next step when you're running and you can see your foot, you're reaching way too far out in front of you. If you are someone who also lands directly in front of you and has a heel strike, that will give you some increased stress throughout your system. And obviously you have to pull from in front of you, you have to pull the ground underneath you, behind you, and then push off again. So you're increasing the amount of time that you're spending on the ground, you're increasing the amount of stress that's going through your body and your system, which at the same time, based off of position of the hamstring, you're putting more tension and stress on the hamstring by activating and having to push through that increased motion, which may be giving you some of that pain. It could be also related to not having a backward traveling foot. Just one stepping back real quick. I know I said heel striking being a problem. It can be a problem for some, especially if we're overstriding, if we're reaching out, and also if we're not having a backwards traveling foot. So if we're going to hit the ground and we hit the ground as our foot's continuing to travel forward, we're going to have like a skidding motion. So if you're someone who runs and you know that you scuff your feet, you're not running appropriately. You need to change that. You're not having a backward traveling foot. You're putting increased stress on your system. You're putting a decreased brake, or you're putting an increased brake on your running performance. And by doing that, you are going to put more stress on your body, more stress on your system. You're slowing yourself down and giving you pain. So heel striking is not bad entirely. You just need to focus on when it's happening and how efficient it is. Because there are elite athletes or professional athletes out there who do run with heel strikes, and they're 100% fine. So I'm not saying heel striking is bad, so don't worry about that. But we want that backward traveling foot. It's going to make us more efficient. It's going to make us spend less time on the ground. It's going to put less stress on our body, and it's going to give us less overall potentiality for discomfort and pain. If it's not related to your running form, then we have to focus on your strength. Just like we talked about with Penny, we need to focus on maintaining appropriate protein in our diet. We need to make sure that we are focusing on doing strength training on our at least 2 to 3 times a week, whether that's built in on the same day that we're doing running training, or it's a completely separate day. We need to be doing 2 to 3 times a week to be constantly improving on our strength. 1 to 2 times a week if we're trying to maintain something, especially if we're in the competitive season. And we need to focus on our glutes, because that may be where we're having a imbalance potentially. There's a lot of factors that still go into it, but usually glutes are the issue. We're using the hamstrings too significantly enough as far as pushing off the ground. Same thing can happen with the calf. We may not have strong enough calves, we may not have strong enough feet, and that's putting excessive stress and strain through our system and putting more stress on the hamstring. Just like with your car, if the tire is worn out, or if the shocks are worn out, or the brakes are not working efficiently, all those things lead to increased stress and strain on the rest of your system of your car. And that can, just like your body, lead to injury, lead to pain, lead to breaking down. So trying to focus on staying on top of your strength training and staying on top of your rest days, especially if you feel like you need a recovery day, and instead trying not to push through it. So making sure we're getting enough sleep, making sure we're getting, like I said, enough protein, making sure we're building in rest days. And that strength training needs to be specific, obviously, to the areas that we're compensating in. And then we also need to focus our strength training on being functional. So lunges, squats, it needs to be related to running itself. So it not only needs to be double leg, but it needs to be single leg, because running is a single leg sport. But because we run from one leg to the other leg and we jump back and forth. So those are all factors in there. If you're not having enough of that, if we're doing strength training and you're still not seeing results, we may either need to look at your form and your activation of your muscles to make sure that we're not compensating very well by using your hamstring to do squats, to do deadlifts, to do lunges. So we need to look at your performance, your mechanics as you're going through it. Like if you For some people who squat, they have a butt winch, so every time they go down into their squat, their pelvis will rotate backwards. They'll slump into a bad posture. If they're dealing with any of that, if they're dealing with any of that, that could be a potentiality of compensation that results in some of the pain that they may be dealing with. So keep that in mind. Amy, I'd love to take a look at you further, figure out and talk to you more specifically about what you've tried, what you haven't tried, what somebody has looked at, if somebody has looked at you already, and figure out what's the next best step for you. And TikTok is giving me a solution for trying to keep going here. But we're going to be timing out soon anyway. So we're going to be signing off. So I'm going to wrap up what we're doing for tonight. And let me just figure out what TikTok's doing here. I got that. There we go. All right, we're good, TikTok. All right. So Amy, again, if you're dealing with any specific issues like this and you want to speak with me, I'd be more than happy to get on a phone call with you, set up a video chat, or see you in person if you're local, and figure out what's the next best step for you, and figure out how we can help you get rid of this hamstring issue while we're speed training. So I'm going to wrap it up for tonight, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's live. Again, join us every Wednesday. I think next week is going to be 6:30 that we're going to be doing this. Yep. So we're going to try 6 o'clock, but it may be 6:30. I will post it in the stories on all of our social media platforms, regardless of what's going on for the day, to make sure you guys know, and also so you guys can automatically submit your questions beforehand, so that we can answer your questions live, whether it's directly through here or if it's pre-prepared through our social media posts. So have a great night. Enjoy your weekend. And I will see you guys in the next one. Dr. Rob signing out.